Hey everybody, welcome to the Empowered CPA. I am Dawn Scott. It's January, which means we're kicking off tax season, and the first thing that every single business owner needs to do is determine whether or not there is a filing requirement for 1099s. So the process is similar every year. There's small changes that the IRS makes just to keep us on our toes. But the first thing you're going to need to do is gather up all those bank statements, not your credit card statements, but your bank statements. You're going to look to each and every vendor you paid more than $600 for during the duration of the year through those bank statements, and you're going to request a W-9 if you've not done that yet. There are several ways to actually physically report the information on the required forms. We use Track 1099 here at my firm. There's similar offerings. I just recommend staying away from the paper copy where you have to mail them and print out on those red pages. And then everything we do, we like to celebrate at the end when we are done and everything's filed on time. So to start out, like I said, grab your bank statements. If you are someone who commingles your personal and your business accounts, stop doing that right away. However, you're going to need both of those to look to every single vendor, add up what you paid them for the year, and then anyone who you paid over $600 is going to make the cut and move to the next stage. So just because you paid them more than $600 doesn't necessarily mean that you actually have to give them a W-9 or a 1099. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next section. So it's just some things to consider. In 2020, just to add insult to injury for everything else that was happening, the IRS changed the 1099 miscellaneous that we were all accustomed to a new form called the 1099 NEC. So if you're looking for that old 1099 miscellaneous, you're not going to see it. Everything now goes on that 1099 NEC. There's a lot of confusion around PayPal, Venmo, all of those types of cash transfer apps. So the down low on PayPal, if you use the business portion of PayPal, they're going to take care of anything over the required dollar figure. So you don't have to include any payments made via PayPal. If you use the PayPal friends and family for business, which we're not technically supposed to do, but we all know things happen, those amounts paid are going to need to be included in your calculation. Anything paid via Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, those all do need to be included, so make sure that those get added into your totals. Nothing, like I said, via credit card. The credit card processors, so your MasterCard, your Visa, your Amex, all of those, and anything you pay via merchant service, those get captured on their side, so you don't have to worry about those. The important due date for this year is January 31st. They need to be sent out either electronically or via the mail by the 31st. And a new change for this year is you also have to give them to the IRS by that date. So that is something that usually happens automatically, but you just need to be knowledgeable that that has changed this year. You're also going to need your information. So your business EIN if you have one, your business name if you have one, and then your address. That information will also be needed. So then the next thing that we need to talk about is your W-9. There's some best practices around that are going to make January every year a lot easier. So when you first start working with a new vendor, it's best practice to ask them for a W-9 before you issue them payment. People are a lot more inclined to give you the information you need when you're withholding payment. If you circle back with somebody in January, you're not guaranteed to get that from them, and that opens a whole new can of problems. So request that W-9 before you issue that first payment, and then you're not going to have any issues. The IRS has the form you need, so the link is here in the documentation for you. Once you receive that information from your vendor, you're going to be able to determine what type of entity they are. So that is really what determines, first is the $600, and then next it's that incorporation status. So if someone gives you a W-9 and they're either an S corporation or a C corporation, you don't actually have to give them a 1099. But you need to keep that on file for your records in case you're ever questioned. You can say, listen, and questioned by the IRS is who I'm referring to. You can say, we have this on file, they are incorporated, which is why we did not issue them a 1099. There are two exceptions to that rule, always. Any work you do with a law firm, they do need to receive a 1099 NEC. And then any commercial landlord that you pay does require a 1099 miscellaneous. So that old form is still in existence. It's just different than it has been historically. So all lawyers, and then if you pay a landlord for your commercial lease. So then the next step would be the actual filing of the documents. We use Track 1099 like I talked about earlier. There are other options. I've just been really happy with Track 1099. Not endorsed by them by any means. I don't get any money from them. It's just what I use personally for my firm. The only thing I will tell you is trying to align your printer to the paper forms that are all red will probably take years off your life. So I would avoid doing that and really just stick with one of the reputable online accounts that you can create. They'll transfer and or mail the documents for you, and it's just a lot easier. So you need to make sure you have your business information. If you don't have an incorporated business and you're operating under your Social Security and your name, that is the name that would go under your payer information. So you don't technically have to have an EIN, just use that Social Security number. And then next, you'd enter each one of your payee vendor information. So you determine who you have to pay, the amount you have to pay, and then each one of those goes in under payer information. And again, it's for calendar year. So January till December, anyone you paid more than $600. So we get a lot of questions, technicalities that I think are important to address. So what if I'm a business and I'm supposed to receive a 1099, but I didn't? So I get this a lot. A lot of people think if I'm supposed to receive a 1099, but I don't, I'm not going to report the income. You're going to find yourself in trouble. First off, you're obviously supposed to report all of your income that you receive. So by not reporting it when you don't get a 1099, you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing. But a bigger pain or threat of audit, if somebody does issue you a late 1099, the IRS is going to match up what you reported versus what they received, and they're going to issue you a notice of deficiency. So in that instance, you're going to be billed for the tax that you should have paid in addition to penalties and interest. So you can avoid all of that by just capturing all of your income, whether or not you did receive those 1099s. In the event that someone does issue you a late 1099, the IRS sends you a notice, you'd be able to write them back through a letter stating that you did not receive your 1099, but it was indeed included in your total, and then that will go away. Sometimes you need help from a CPA or other person to make that happen, but it is a way to show that you did include it, therefore you're not actually subject to those penalties and interest and additional tax. So that just covers you, make sure that no matter what happens, you're safe. Another question is, well, what if I miss the deadline and I don't issue the 1099s that I'm supposed to? If you have an obligation to issue those and they find out that you did not issue those, you will be subject to a fine and penalties, and that is based on the time period between when it was supposed to be issued and when it was actually issued, and then the number of people you were supposed to issue them to. So there is a threshold of how much that penalty can possibly get to, but it's in like the almost $3 million range. So, you know, it's obviously not that small if you have 5 or 6 that you were supposed to issue, but really best practice is just to try to get those out so that you don't have to deal with that. Who you have to issue them to, again, is anyone who's not incorporated. So anyone whose entity structure is not an S Corp or a C Corp. And that will be dictated on that W-9. And then ensuring that you are filed by January 31st. I always like to have people start right at the beginning of January, getting their books together, identifying their people, and then starting the process of getting those W-9s, because they can take a week or 2 or 3 to get that information, and you don't want to be up against the deadline. So that's really the general information around those 1099s, ensuring you're done on time, ensuring you're capturing all your information, and then you'll roll right into tax season because all your books will be ready to go. So thanks again for joining me. We have lots of other videos up on the empoweredcpa.com that'll help you clarify anything that you may be experiencing in your business.